It is utterly fitting that a conference devoted to philanthropic partnerships feature George Soros as a speaker. George Soros is a man of reflection and a man of action. He has flourished as a financier, a philanthropist, and a political activist. He has had tantamount success in both generating wealth and in thoughtfully giving it away. Mr. Soros places at the heart of his giving the essence of community. And it is this commitment to community, this spirit of community, that animates the civil societies that he champions. Having known both fascism and communism, Mr. Soros speaks out fervently against all fundamentalisms, be they religious, national, Marxist, or market. Often partnering with others, the Open Society Institute grants out over $500 million a year to strengthen and grow civil societies around the world. Mr. Soros has also founded a network of philanthropic organizations based in over 50 countries. OSI and this network support organizations that promote democratic institutions, support public health, public education, independent media, human rights, women's rights, and social, legal, and economic reform. Partnering with governments, other donors, and local activists, Mr. Soros utilizes his resources to leverage even greater resources to build bridges between civil societies and business, between governments and the people that they serve. Here in Silicon Valley and here in the Global Philanthropy Forum, we define community broadly, crossing borders and cultures with ease. Mr. Soros, in many respects, is a model philanthropist because he defines himself and his own giving as both part of and responsible to a global community. And it is this global commitment that challenges all of us to stretch the boundaries not only of our giving, but also of our imaginations, to make connections between the local and the global, to form alliances not only with other donors here in Silicon Valley, but with donors and beneficiaries in the global community. It is this message and this model which beautifully reflects the spirit of the Global Philanthropy Forum. Last night, Jane described the Global Philanthropy Forum as a learning community, and I completely agree. And I cannot think of a better teacher, a better model for us all to provoke us to think critically and to act compassionately than George Soros. Mr. Soros, we are so honored to have you here.
Well, it's I who is being honored. and I'll try to live up to your expectations. I'm ready to, I'm ready to discuss any subject that interests you, but to start off the discussion, maybe I'll mention two of the initiatives that are currently high on my agenda. Your theme here is partnership. And one of the things that interests me very much is partnership with governments, because you have occasionally a democratic regime change. When I'm not talking about the United States. I'm talking about the countries where I have foundations, or countries where I don't have foundations. Africa, very often, or quite often, you have elections, and a new, clean government comes into power and doesn't have the capacity to fulfill the promises that it has made. And in this case, over the years, I've seen this as one of the great bottlenecks in moving to, in building open societies. And I have tried to do what I can in the foundations, and I think it's something that needs to be institutionalized. And now we have a case in Georgia where there has been a democratic regime change. A group of people who campaigned on an anti-corruption platform gained the support of the people. The results were forged or falsified, but my foundation ran an exit poll which showed the real results, and the people believed the real results, and actually the corrupt regime was swept out of power. You had a revolution of the roses, as they call it, a velvet revolution. And it's a very thrilling, wonderful development in an area where there's very little good news. Now, what they need is an ability to pay some key civil servants a living wage so that they can break with their habit of corruption. To be able to attract some people from abroad to return, give them some reasonable salaries so they can live at home, so you can have a reverse migration. Specifically, one of the major forms of corruption were roadblocks, where the police would stop the trucks going from Turkey to Central Asia and hold them up for a bribe every so often, every village or so. Now, the new government actually, by firing some of these policemen, managed to stop this. But unless they can pay the policemen at least $150 a month, they will have to do it again because they have to keep their families going. So what we are doing is setting up a capacity building fund. I went into partnership with UNDP because they are the one international organization that can provide salaries. Others, like the World Bank, for instance, or the US government, cannot do it. And we will pay for 1 year the $150 a month for 5,000 policemen, and next year maybe half, and then the government can take it over. So this is one initiative. We actually need some other participants, so that's why I mentioned. And at lunchtime, I already, by coincidence, had one taker here, which I don't know if he wants to be named, but he just came back from Georgia, and just a coincidence. So it was worthwhile to come here. But this is something that I think this is something that needs to be developed. It needs to be recognized. There are lots of problems involved because paying more salaries to some people creates a lot of resentment. But if it is done by an international organization on totally transparent grounds, I think it will be acceptable. Now, the other, actually, the next country we want to do this is in Nigeria. And that brings me to the other initiative that I wanted to draw your attention to. And that is to deal with what we call the resource curse. You have many countries that are rich in natural resources, but the people are poor, and the economic development is actually slower than it is in countries that don't have natural resources. And that is due to the fact that the money is wasted, that you have repressive regimes because the resource companies need a license to operate, and they need to get that license from the government. And the government, by being able to grant the license, has a revenue source which provides a great incentive to stay in power and also the means for staying in power. So there is a whole history of autocratic repressive regimes, of civil strife. In the case of the Congo, for instance, you could actually buy a license by paying for mercenaries who are going to put a new government into power that will give you that license. So, I mean, it's a very interesting subject, and if you look at the Middle East and the lack of democratic development, well, it has a lot to do with oil. Now, if you can hold the governments responsible, and actually, in case of a government that wants to, help them to use the resources for the benefit of the people, you then have the resources and you can really bring about significant change. So there is now a movement in developing to accomplish this. It really started with publish what you pay. To get the oil companies and other mining companies to disclose the amount of money they pay in signature bonuses, in royalties, and so on. Then that gives the basis for advocating or to monitor how that money is spent. So, for instance, we set up a Caspian Revenue Watch. This is in countries like Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, to monitor how the government spends the money that it receives. In the case of Azerbaijan, we have a very cooperative lead oil company, British Petroleum, that actually is willing to disclose how much they are giving, how much they are paying. So that gives the ground for this kind of advocacy. The Publish What You Pay campaign led to an initiative by the British government called the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. And most of the oil companies are just met the chairman of Chevron, actually, also before lunch. And his company is among the companies that are subscribing to that initiative. And that then gives the ground for advocacy in the country. And in Nigeria, you have a president, Obasanjo, who, having been re-elected, he used to be vice chairman of Transparency International before he returned to Nigeria. He didn't do too well in his first term, but now that he's re-elected, he is very really determined to bring about improvement. And UNDP paid the salaries necessary to bring back somebody working at the World Bank, a Nigerian woman, very capable woman, Ngozi, to be finance minister. And around him there is a small reform group. It so happens that the board member of my foundation, Julius Echemberia, became the chief political advisor of Obasanjo. And because of that, I have some confidence that maybe this time some real results can be accomplished. Nigeria is a country where everything has been tried and nothing has succeeded. And when I set up a foundation there and I went there, I felt that, you know, this is one foundation too far. But I now have some hope that actually this group will really deliver. But they need some capacity building to be able to build this reform team. So here the circle is sort of completed, that on the one, you know, how resource curse leads to capacity building. But these are two things that I am very keen on, and they are rather sort of path-breaking, and I thought I would mention them to you. And for the rest, this is sort of opening, and I don't know if you have microphones, you probably do. I'd much rather talk about whatever you are interested in. So.
I'm Bill Unger. My question is, either as an internal compass or an external set of criteria, how do you decide what to do, where to spend your time, what things you are and aren't going to get involved with? Because there's so much to do.
Well, you know, we take a sort of entrepreneurial approach. In other words, there is an idea, like, for instance, this publish what you pay. It sounds interesting, it's promising, so I back it, right? Then it has legs, it's becoming a movement. Then I back it some more. It's just like a venture capitalist puts some money into an idea, and if it meets certain expectations, then you put more and more money into it, and it can become a very big enterprise. And that's more or less the way I approach, because one doesn't know, you can't really plan it out and say, I'm going to do this and this and this. And basically, it depends on mobilizing forces which are there. In other words, you can't come and impose something. It has to grow. It has to grow organically. And this is basically what the foundations have been doing, because they're all based in the country, run by people in the country. The boards are independent of me. They are grant recipients. And some foundations do better than others. And if they don't do well, then I change the board, or the executive director. But it's their affair. And the best things that have been done without my knowledge.
My name is Ron Swenson, here from Silicon Valley. And 4 years ago, I was with the Minister of Petroleum and from Nigeria, in fact, with Secretary Richardson. And we had an interesting discussion. The upshot of it is that, as perhaps you know, we're going to reach a peak sometime in oil. And according to a group of leading geologists that I've been working with for a number of years, we're going to see that time in this decade. And you can read about that at oilcrisis.com. And because I've been able to spend time with these people, I'm aware that the stability of civil society very much depends on how we deal with the transition from a world that's based on oil to one in which renewable energy can give us a way out. And since at that point when oil begins to decline, it has to do double duty. It has to, number one, keep our existing economy going, and secondly, energize the production of the hardware that we need for the new economy. And since we're in Silicon Valley and solar energy is much with photovoltaics based on silicon, I think it's apropos that we consider the prospects for a stable society through this transition as for example, 10 calories of oil in every calorie of oil that we eat in the civilized world. I mean the industrial world.
No, the problem is very real, but this is not a problem that I am addressing, because I basically am concerned about propagating the values of open society, which is a social thing, and this is very much a technical and also a political problem, and it needs to be addressed on that level. So I happened to listen to a lecture by Al Gore, who, since he is no longer a candidate for presidency, has become a true statesman and also a very good speaker. So I commend his lecture to your attention. It really gave me a lot of food for thought, and I think you can get it on moveon.org.
I'd like to pick up on the issue of the living wage. It is a noble enterprise to help sitting government to augment the living wage of the civil servants. But what about the sustainability of that approach?
What about?
The sustainability of that approach. When you move on,
yes,
what happens to a government that still cannot pay a living wage?
Yes. No, this is of course one of the problems with this approach, and the program has to be gradually taken over by the government. In the case of Georgia, you start from such a low base and with no revenues because of corruption, that once you pay the customs officers and a living wage, they are supposed to collect more than their wages in revenues. And so this has to be sustainable, and the governments have to be able to take it over. This has to be a transitory step that could last for 3 years, let's say. Maybe in certain cases might be 5 years. Or over there. lots of people over there.
Hi, I'm Kate Greswell from the TOSA Foundation. We're here at the Global Philanthropy Forum. One of the biggest actors in the world is the United States. And I'm wondering if you're taking any actions to influence that actor in the world.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The question is, I'd like to know what actions you're taking to influence perhaps the biggest actor in the world, the United States, with your philanthropy.
What I'm doing in the United States? The foundation is active in the United States. It has a number of programs, and I have become personally active politically. And we can use all the help we can get in that. But I don't think it's appropriate for me to discuss it at this forum, because I've got two lawyers sitting next to me to make sure that I have a proper separation between the activities of the foundation and my political involvement. So I'd like to keep my political engagement out of this discussion. I'm happy to discuss it outside. There's somebody.
I'm Swanee Hunt and have worked with your foundations, various foundations in the Balkans, in Sarajevo and elsewhere. When I think about George Soros, there are many images, but primarily I think of you as the risk taker, the one who saw problems and didn't look around for what institutions were already there, but came up with creative solutions. I'm sure you've had stunning failures, terrible disappointments, and I'm sure also that there have been successes that you could not have predicted. Would you reflect on those?
Well, I don't know if I can do it off the top of my head. I would say the greatest disappointment is how Russia has turned out. And it's not, I don't feel that it's anything where I have done something wrong. It's what the rest of the world didn't do that has brought about this result. I think actually what we've done in Russia has been very constructive and very effective. It just we didn't do enough of it. So we are just, as a foundation, we're too small for the task. And now, the opening, the revolution, has led to restoration, and the state that is reemerging is far too similar to the state that has collapsed. So in many ways it's different, of course. So it is disappointing, and there was this sort of revolutionary moment when a lot more could have been done, and it wasn't done. As far as successes, I mean, as I said before, that the greatest satisfaction is when I go around the foundations and they tell me what they have accomplished. I mean, give you one example. I was in Tajikistan, and the foundation has supported a group of women engaged in human rights. And these are women in sort of serious positions, judges and so on. And they managed to get the death sentence for women suspended or abolished. That was quite an accomplishment in that country. So that is, for instance, an example of success. Yes.
I'm Yang Che, Intercultural Institute of California in San Francisco. Well, you just mentioned the disappointment about how Russia turned out, but certainly we have never imagined that the Soviet downfall is ever going to be possible. Now, currently, the most closed society is North Korea, and I would like to hear your thoughts and your strategies how to make North Korea a democratic place.
President Kim Dae-jung had a policy, what he called the sunshine policy, that you befriend a country, and when the sun shines, people take their overcoats off. And the policy was flawed. There was quite a bit of corruption or improper financial transactions involved. So I'm not defending it as such, but he was very, very hopeful that it would work had it been given a chance. And he came to Washington, one of the first foreign heads of state to visit, trying to enlist President Bush's support. He had Colin Powell supporting him, and then Bush rebuffed him. And that's when the situation in North Korea deteriorated, and we now have the crisis, and we are now back to negotiating some kind of a deal using the good offices of the Chinese to try to deal with the nuclear threat. So I think that the sunshine policy basically would have some chance if one could get the appropriate assurances on the nuclear side, which is very difficult. But I think that the makings of a deal, of an opening are there, because the government actually is seeking it because they know that they are totally bankrupt and that they cannot really go on. All they have is a threat, and that's the only asset, and missiles. That's the only asset that they can trade, and I think that they are ready to trade, but it's a difficult proposition. Now, I can also tell you that we have students from North Korea at the Central European University, which is my university in Budapest, studying business. Now, I think that could be helpful if and when a deal is struck, because then there will be at least a few people who will have been trained. Okay, one final question. Okay.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Nicole Sanchez, and I'm with an organization called Youth Philanthropy Worldwide, which, as the name suggests, engages young people in international philanthropy and teaches them how to make giving part of their everyday life. And one of the things that we hear often is, well, I don't have the resources of George Soros. Why am I making a difference? I can't make a difference, and I'd like to take them back a message from George Soros. And so I would wonder how you would respond to that if a young person said, I have $10, $15 to give to something I'm passionate about. Why does it make a difference? So, thanks.
Well, I don't know about the $15, but I think I think that basically the contribution that I and my foundations have made have been by empowering people who want to bring about improvement. So we've often the grants, and in fact, at the heroic days of the foundation, our grants were like $50, and they allowed people to do something that they wanted to do that would benefit their society. So I don't think, I mean, the only thing that distinguishes me from others is that I've got more money. Thank you.